여러분 안녕하세요. Today we're going to learn 6 essential particles for high beginners, and let's start with 동안. 동안. It's often used with duration counters such as 년, 달, 개월, 주, 주일, 일, 시간, 분, or 초. So for example, guys, if you say 한국어를 1년 동안 배웠어요, it means you learned Korean for 1 year, 1년 동안. 여기에서 7개월 동안 일했어요. You work here for 7 months. 2주 동안 쉬었어요. For 2 weeks, you took a break. 고향에 5일 동안 있었어요. You were in your 고향, hometown, for 5 days. And 1시간 동안 기다렸어요. You waited for an hour. And one thing to note about 동안 in this case is that 동안 can be omitted when used with a duration counter because duration counter already implies that you're talking about duration. So, for example, if you want to say, I learned Korean for a year, it's okay to say 한국어를 1년 배웠어요 without 동안, or 2주 쉬었어요 without 동안, or 1시간 기다렸어요. I waited for an hour. And 동안 can also be used with time period nouns that inherently express a length of time, such as 방학, school vacation, 겨울, or summer. So these are not duration counters, they are nouns, right? And please note that in this case, 동안 cannot be omitted because that way the meaning would be unclear. So if you want to say, I traveled during school vacation, you have to say, 방학 동안 여행을 했어요. Not 방학 여행을 했어요. In that case, it would be unclear because there is no duration counter used. So 방학 동안, during school vacation, 겨울 동안, during the winter, during winter, 따뜻한 옷을 입어요. 3월 동안, during March, 열심히 일했어요. When you say 주말 동안 기다렸어요, and 주말 기다렸어요, these two mean two different things. So when you say 주말 동안 기다렸어요, it indicates that 주말 is the duration, the time frame. So you waited during the weekend. Whereas if you just say 주말 기다렸어요, 주말 would be the direct object of 기다리다. So it would mean I waited for the weekend. So be mindful not to omit 동안 when used with time period nouns that are not counters. Before I move on to 마다, let's do a quick practice using 동안. So how would you say, what did you do during the weekend? So time information comes first, right? So during the weekend, 주말 동안, 주말 동안. Note that there has to be space between the noun and 동안. 주말 동안. What did you do? 뭐 했어요? 뭐 했어요? Right? How about I studied for 2 hours? So for 2 hours, 2시간. You could say 2시간 동안. Or since 시간 is already a duration counter, you can also omit 동안. 2시간 동안 or 2시간 공부했어요 would be the natural way to say this, right? And moving on to 마다, guys, 마다. So 마다 is also a particle that indicates a consistent pattern. So it can be translated as every, each, or once per. So it's often used with time duration, but it's not limited to time duration, and it can also be used with other nouns to indicate a consistent pattern. So for example, guys, if you say 한 시간마다, it means every hour, right? A consistent pattern happens every hour. So 한 시간마다 물을 마셔요. I drink water every hour. 3일마다, so every 3 days, 집을 청소해요. I clean my house every 3 days. And 교실마다 would mean there's a consistent pattern in 교실 for every 교실, right? Every classroom. 컴퓨터가 있어요. 교실마다 컴퓨터가 있어요. Every classroom has a computer. And 사람마다, for every person, 성격, personality is different. So everyone has a different personality, could be expressed like this. So you might be wondering, then for every day, every week, every month, and every year, do you say 일일마다, 일주일마다, 일개월마다, and 1년마다? So these are grammatically correct phrase, but there are way more commonly used words in everyday life, which are 매일, 매주, 매달, and 매년. And this 매 comes from the 한자. It's a Sino-Korean word that means every. And these are much more commonly used words for every day, every week, every month, and every year than these four. So make sure you use these words. For example, if you want to say, I eat breakfast every day, you can say 매일 아침 먹어요. And for every week, you could say 매주 꽃에 물을 줘요. I water the flower every week. 매달 축구 경기가 있어요. So actually, guys, 달 is a pure Korean word for month, and 월 is the Sino-Korean word for month. So you might be wondering, why isn't it 매월? Why is it 매달? Interestingly, when expressing every month, the word 달 is used with 매, and 매월 is still used, but it sounds a bit more formal. So we tend to stick to 매달 rather than 매월. And for every year, you could say 매년. So 저희 가족은 매년 해외여행을 가요. Moving on to the next particle, 쯤 and 정도. They both mean around, about. That indicates approximation. Meaning-wise, there's no difference between 쯤 and 정도, but the only difference is in spacing. So 쯤 is written directly attached to the preceding noun without spacing, while 정도 has to be used with a space after the noun. So that's the only difference. But when speaking, it wouldn't really make difference because when you're speaking, you don't say space out loud. So let's look at the example sentences. 2주일쯤 됐어요. It's been about 2 weeks. 오늘 커피를 2잔 정도 마셨어요. About 2 cups of coffee, right? 4월쯤에, around April, in around April, literally, 벚꽃이 피어요. The cherry blossoms bloom. All right, so let's do a quick review quiz. So how would you say, I get a haircut every 2 months? Every 2 months. 2 months can be expressed as either 2 달, right? Pure Korean word. Or if you want to use Sino-Korean word, you can say 2개월. 2개월. For every consistent pattern, you can use the particle 마다. So 2달마다 or 2개월마다 머리를 잘라요. And one thing about the difference between 개월 and 달, guys, native Korean speakers tend to use 달 more often for 1 to 4 months. And for the rest, 개월 is more commonly used. All right, and moving on to the next one, I go to church every Sunday. So another consistent pattern. 일요일마다 교회에 가요. And I watch K-dramas every day. We learned that you could say 일일마다, but this sounds very awkward. We rather say 매일. 매일. This is an adverb that means every day. Sino-Korean word that means every day. 집에서 도서관까지, from house to the library, it takes, 걸려요, around 30 minutes. Around. We could use either 쯤 or 정도. So you could say 30분쯤 without spacing, or 30분 space 정도 걸려요. It takes around 30 minutes. How about let's talk again around September. Around September. You could say 9월쯤. 9월쯤에 or 9월 정도에 다시 얘기해요. So we learned about the 3 particles, and now let's move on to the other 3, 이나, 밖에, and 처럼. Let's start with 이나, guys. 이나. So if a noun ends with a consonant, you can use 이나. If a noun ends with a vowel, you can use 나. So it has 2 main meanings, and the first meaning it has is either A or B, as in you're listing 2 or more options when you're open to like any of them, or when you're unsure which one is correct. So for example, if you want to say, I'll have coffee or tea, like you're not decided yet, but you're open to either one, you could say, 커피나 차를 마실 거예요. 저는 매일, every day, 국수나 밥. Either noodles or rice. I eat one of these every day. Like one of these are always my option. 양말이, the socks. 서랍이나 옷장. Either the drawer or the closet에 있을 거예요. It will either be in the closet or, in the drawer or the closet. So this means that you are unsure which one it is, but you're certain that it's one of the 2. And the next one, 지금 집에 누가 있어요? Who's at home right now? 제 여동생이나 either my younger sister or Mom will be there. So I'm not sure specifically who, but one of these 2 I'm certain is home. In that case, you can use 이나, 나, right? So one very common mistake about 이나 that a lot of learners make is using it in will you choose this or that question. So for example, if you say 커피나 차를 마실 거예요? This doesn't mean will you drink coffee or tea, as in like choose one of the 2. But instead, it means will you drink one of these options, coffee or tea? So it's asking whether either option is okay for you, not asking you to like choose one. So if you want to ask like choose one question, this or that, the simplest and the most common way is to repeat the structure of the question. So for example, if you want to ask if this person will drink coffee or tea, as in like choosing one of the 2, you could say 커피 마실 거예요, 차 마실 거예요. So it's very, very simple, right? And if you want to sound, I guess, a bit more advanced, although it's not like absolutely necessary, you can also add 아니면. 커피 마실 거예요. 아니면 차 마실 거예요. 이거 샀어요. 저거 샀어요. Did you buy this or that one? Like you're asking the other person to choose one, right? 이거 샀어요. 아니면 저거 샀어요. You can ask it like this, but you cannot use 이나 when asking. Choose one question. And 이나 can also mean as many as in emphasizing the abundance of something, like emphasizing how many, how much there is. So it usually implies being more than expected, or it's a surprisingly large amount. So for example, if you say 바나나를 5개나 먹었어요, it means you had as many as 5 bananas, and that's a lot. You're emphasizing how much it is, how many it is, right? 10시간이나 잤어요. You could just say 10시간 잤어요 to sound neutral, but if you want to like emphasize that's a lot, like that's a lot more than I usually sleep, then you could say 10시간이나 잤어요. 한국어 단어를 100개나 알아요. I know as many as 100 Korean words. 커피를 3잔이나 마셨어요. I drank or you drank as many as 3 cups of coffee. So since 이나 in this case is used to emphasize the amount or how many there is, it's often used with the counter phrase, right? And moving on to the next one, 밖에. So 밖에 plus negative verb expresses only, and we've learned another particle 만 to mean only, right? So you might be wondering what's the difference between the 2, and we'll get there soon in this part, but let's look at the example sentences first. So one thing to note about 밖에 is that, so 밖에 itself means outside, but when you want to express only with 밖에, it must be followed by a negative verb. So for example, if you want to say, I only have 1,001, you could say 1,000원 밖에 not 있어요. You have to say 없어요. And this means I only have 1,001. 1,000원 밖에 없어요. 감자를 2개밖에 안 먹었어요. It means you ate only 2 potatoes. 이거 밖에 몰라요. I only know this one. 1시간 밖에 자지 않았어요. I only slept for an hour. 노란색 밖에 안 좋아해요. I only like the color yellow. Yellow is the only color that I like. So it could be a little counterintuitive for native English speakers to use the negative verb together with 밖에. But if you translate it literally, it means outside 1,000원, I have none. Outside 2 potatoes, I didn't eat. Outside this, I don't know. It makes sense why it works like that, right? So 밖에 has to be used with negative verb if you want to express only. So moving on to the difference, guys, between 만 and 밖에. So 만 sounds a bit more general and neutral, whereas 밖에 more emphasizes a sense of limitation. It's like saying as little as, or this is all there is. So in a way, you can think of 밖에 plus negative verb as an antonym, like direct antonym of 이나. So 이나 emphasizes abundance, whereas 밖에 emphasizes scarcity. So they are in a way opposite counterparts. And the last particle is 처럼. So 처럼 means like, or as, adjective as, like as big as beautiful as, that kind of as. So it's used to indicate that an action, the predicate, the action or quality is similar to another noun. So for example, if you say 지수는 가수처럼 노래를 잘해요. She sings well like a singer, like a professional singer. 봄처럼 따뜻하다. A warm like spring. Warm like spring. So weather that is warm like spring, I like. 봄처럼 따뜻한 날씨를 좋아해요. 아빠는 로봇처럼 정확하게. As precisely as a robot. 로봇처럼 정확하게 일해요. This was pretty easy to learn, right? So let's do like a final review of the last 3 particles that we learned. 이나, or as much as, 밖에, only, and 처럼, like. So how would you say, I will drink either juice or water? Like I'm open to any of them. I'll have one of those too. You could say, 주스, 나, 물을 마실 거예요. Since juice ends with a vowel, it's not 이나, you should say 나. I will take either the subway or the bus to work. I'm okay with one of those too. 지하철, this time it's 이나 because 지하철 ends with a consonant. So 지하철이나 버스로 출근해요. I go to work by either subway or bus. 수업에 학생 2명 blank 안 왔어요. Only 2 students came to class. So you want to express only with the negative verb. So in this case, we only have 1 correct particle. 2명 밖에 안 왔어요. 2명밖에 안 왔어요. I got as many as 90 points on this exam. Like, wow, 90 points, right? Emphasizing how high your score is. In this case, you could use the 이나 particle. 90점이나 받았어요. And 엄마 blank 요리 잘해요. I cook as well as my mom. So you're indicating resemblance. You could say 엄마처럼 요리를 잘해요. And let's try translation as well from scratch. So let's translate these sentences in you ending. Let's eat either rice or noodles. So let's eat one of these two. Rice or noodles. 밥이나 rice or 국수. Let's eat. 먹어요. 밥이나 국수 먹어요. How about Why did you order as many as 10 cups of coffee? 10 cups of coffee. 커피 10잔. 커피 10잔. Oh, sorry. We forgot the question word why, right? So 왜 커피 10잔? 이나, you want to emphasize 10 cups of coffee, like that's a surprisingly large amount. 커피 10잔이나 시켰어요. So the instruction tells us to use 주문하다. So let's use 주문하다. 주문했어요. But another word for order is 시키다. So you could also say 시켰어요. 왜 커피 10잔이나 주문했어요? 왜 커피 10잔이나 시켰어요? And I only made one cake. Let's assume that you are emphasizing as little as one cake, like only one cake. You're emphasizing scarcity. In this case, we could use 밖에 plus the negative verb, right? So I only made one cake. 케이크 한 개. 케이크 한 개 밖에. And then we have to use a negative verb. So 안 만들었어요. 안 만들었어요. Or you could also use 지 않다, right? And say 만들지 않았어요. Both are negative verbs. So they can be paired with 밖에. 안 만들었어요. 만들지 않았어요. How about the last one? Jisoo is good at Korean like a native speaker, as in she speaks Korean fluently like a native speaker. So like a native speaker, like a noun, we could say 원어민처럼. Oh, sorry, we forgot the subject first. 지수는, we're talking about 지수 in this sentence. So 지수는 원어민처럼 is good at Korean. 한국어를 잘해요. 한국어를 잘해요. You can translate it like this. Okay, so that was it for this lesson, and I'll see you again in another lesson, guys. 안녕히 가세요.